Hello and welcome to Robot VARNAC Memory Lane. Today's first Memory Lane video is a trip back down memory lane to November 1973 to a popular science magazine from that year, November 1973. There'll be some dollar values shown in this magazine, so remember, the dollar is about 10 times devalued, so when you see a $10 price in November 1973, it's about $100 today. So let's get started. Looking at the cover, you see airbags were a new thing for upcoming 74 cars, because by the end of November 73, they're getting ready for the new model year, 1974. You'll see an ad about U.S. going metric. Did that really happen? We'll see how we can look back today, and was the metric conversion successful? And there's a big comet sighting back then. And you can see there's an article about 1974 color TVs. You'll see obsolete CRT TV technology. And electronic ignition was a big thing. In the late 70s, they had mechanical points for ignition. And diesel car engines were a big thing, and there's a test flight for an advanced space plane. That could have been the cause for some UFO sightings back then. Here's an interesting cigarette ad. If you save up enough cigarette points, you get free prizes. A clever marketing technology for the cigarette companies to help get people hooked on buying their product. And as you can see, there's a shotgun commercial advertisement here. In 1973, guns were more accepted by society until the criminal element took over and made guns a bad word today. Moving right along, there's an Allstate insurance ad. As you know, Allstate insurance is still around today. But you can see the prices for life insurance were a lot cheaper back then. But remember, the dollar has devalued about 10 times since then. So $4 a month would be about $40 today. And this advertising is, you'll see in this old magazine that advertising was a lot more advanced for better readers. People seem to be more intelligent in the 70s than they do today. Here's an ad for Ace Hardware. You get a power drill for $18, or a drill press and a table saw, well, small versions for $130. And there's a Black & Decker toolkit and a little hedge trimmer for $15, and a floating flashlight for $4.50. And a mechanical lamp timer for $7. And there's a little contest entry. You could enter to win an automobile back then. And there's a little masthead to show the circulation for Popular Science magazine at the time. And here's an advertisement for Subaru and the table of contents. And this person talks about how they got 91,000 miles on their Subaru and only spent less than $20 on repairs. But remember, it'd be about $200 today. Here's an advertisement for Marvel Mystery Oil. I believe they're still on the market, but let me know in the comments. And here's an interesting ad about a home light chainsaw. If you went in for a sales demonstration to a home light store, I guess they had retail stores for home light products back then, you get a $10 coupon towards the purchase of an old Polaroid camera. But it shows back then there's a lot more retail stores for these kind of merchants than there are today. I wonder how many home light retail stores there are today. Moving right along, here's an advertising for DAP chemical products for caulking and putty and sealing the drafts out of your home. And a advertisement for a Black & Decker table saw for $35. But if you think about it, this price really is cheap by comparison today, because you can get a good table saw for maybe what, $70-$80 or so. If this translating for the devaluation, this would be like $300. So circular saws are not that expensive today, so you'd think the price actually came down on circular saws, basic ones anyway. Worm drive saws are probably more expensive. And here's an advertisement for the Time Life Old West series of books. You might have seen these advertised on old TV back then too. They'd get a set of books that you send away for about the Old West. I'm not sure if Time Life Books still sells these series of books, so let me know in the comments, or if you have a set of these old books, share your comments of how good the books were. Moving right along, here's an stories about new developments in science at the time. Now a new photoelectric chemical was being developed that improves photocell technology. And of course, another cigarette commercial. Back then, cigarettes were more generally accepted than they are today. There's coolness in your future. Go to smoke cool cigarettes and you'll be cool too. Here's an ad for a steel chainsaw. This was November, so people were probably cutting firewood back then. So you need a chainsaw to cut your own firewood. And here's an advertisement for some kind of bolt compound to keep bolts from coming out of the threads. People were more do-it-yourselfers back then, so they'd be using these kind of chemicals. Don't forget, automobiles were a lot more easier to service on your own back then. They weren't the computerized monstrosities that they are today, that you need to go to a dealer at the drop of a hat today. Speaking of automobiles, here's an advertisement for old station wagons. Did you have a station wagon, or how were they? How did they operate on the road? Let us know in the comments if you had one and how you felt about driving them and how they compare to automobiles today. SUVs today are obviously bigger than these old models then. Here's a ranking of diesel cars that were on the road back then. You can see the Mercedes and some other import models back then. Did you have a car with a diesel engine? How did it run? Let us know in the comments. Was diesel better than gasoline? Of course, electric cars were only a figment of people's imagination back then. They wouldn't have dreamt of having Teslas on the road back then. And of course, another cigarette commercial. Here's a Navy recruitment advertisement asking young people at the time to join the Navy. Here's more continuing about the review of the performance testing of the car test they were doing at the time. And here's an advertisement about how you can train at home to fix color TV sets in your own home, and you build your very own 25-inch solid-state color TV by completing their in-home training, an old correspondence school. Did you do a correspondence school back then, or take a class like that and learn how to work on what is now obsolete CRT TV technology? Of course, the new flat panel TVs we have today were science fiction back then. A 25-inch color TV was about the biggest thing you can get back then. And it tells how you get your own oscilloscope and the training kits and what's included in the training. Here's a continuation of the testing. Notice in these old days they're using old analog meters to do their testing. They didn't really have digital monitors and computers today. When you see them testing cars, you'll see a guy with a laptop testing a car and doing all that today, but back then they had to do it all by hand, and you even see them doing calculations on paper and pen. And here's a goodwill advertisement from Gulf Oil, a friendly advertisement for Big Oil to get people more friendly to using gasoline and oil. Don't forget, in 1973, the oil embargo was going on. People were paying a lot, and gas shortages were going on at the time. So they wanted goodwill. They didn't want people being angry at the big oil companies. Here's another correspondence class thing where you can take computer programming to start a big paying career. You get a free sample lesson by writing your name and address and cutting this thing out of the page and sending this reply. They obviously didn't want to pay for a card in the mail, in the magazine, like this company did, so you had to cut the ad out of the page. They obviously didn't want to pay for the extra processing to have the reply card inserted in the magazine. Here's another ad from Allstate Insurance. They're saying how friendly and helpful they are when you're making a claim. And is Allstate Insurance good? Do they have good claims response? Or would this advertisement really prove true back then if you had Allstate Insurance, automobile insurance in 1973? Let us know in the comments. And they talk more about the diesel engines, the Peugeot and the Mercedes-Benz models. And here's an advertisement to join the Army. We've seen an earlier advertisement for the Navy, so now the Army also needed people. Well, don't forget the war was still going on in Vietnam until, 1975? So 1973, they were still trying to get people in the Army. And here's some articles about new ideas for inventors. Some kind of flap wheel and contraption that the wheels flap around, and this thing is supposed to be all-terrain, but it sounds like it didn't work too well because we don't have such vehicles today. And of course, kind of dual inner tube tires. They didn't have the newer run flat technology. Here's a trim brush. You notice it's still using old-fashioned bristles instead of the foam rubber that would come later on, as foam rubber was able to use for painting. And a mechanical page turners for symphony orchestra players to use. And here's an advertisement for some tool sets, socket wrench sets for $20. So with cheap import socket sets today, you can get those pretty cheap from China today. So it doesn't say country of origin for where they were made. But Dresser Industries is a big corporation at the time, so they might have been importing them to sell them even at that price. And you can see $10, $14 for socket sets, $15, $20, and they even had a guarantee. Detroit Report talking about old obsolete cars, of which are obsolete now. All those cars are pretty much meaningless today. But here's another station wagon advertisement about the Chevy Caprice estate wagon, how the tailgate would actually go inside under the bumper there, and the window would go up, so you have a large opening to get cargo in there. And notice just how big, and there's a land yacht at the time. Look how big the thing is compared to people. Of course, auto companies always use small people when they're in their advertising to make the automobile look bigger than it is in real life. And of course, since smoking was more accepted back then, the smoking companies could certainly pay for double-page advertising like this. Salem refreshes naturally grown menthol, rich tobacco taste. Would people smoke cigarettes if they didn't have nicotine back then? Would you smoke cigarettes if there was no nicotine in them? I doubt if anybody would. Moving right along. Notice they're more advertising about people taking family trips back then. Companies had granting people more time off back then, so families could take longer vacations, and people could actually buy boats and stuff and enjoy their vacation time instead of working harder and with less time off than they do today. And of course, another oil company advertising, trying to get people to use less gas and be less hostile to the big oil companies during the oil embargo. Here's a top listing for Ford Maverick automobile at the time. Surprising luxury and comfort in an economical family car, Ford Maverick for 1974. And of course the article continues about rating the boats at the time. Here's another double-page advertisement for a correspondence school, how you can train at home to repair color TV sets, and in the process you build your own color TV. This company's from Bell and Howell at the time. Remember, we saw an earlier advertisement for NRI correspondence school for the same thing, and they even show the same thing, a color TV, the oscilloscope, the voltmeter, and a little circuit board tester for your training. And they obviously had the money to pay for the reply card to be inserted in the magazine. Bell and Howell School. Did you take a Bell and Howell training correspondence course? Let us know in the comments if it was successful. And if you do repair or fix old color TVs, is there still demand for such a thing with the new HD broadcast standards and 4K coming, and even 8K is coming in the future? So this would all be obsolete technology today. Here's a very interesting advertisement about the Leica CL, little compact 35mm camera. The funny thing is, the camera back then was $680. That's $680. How much did people make back in 1973 to buy a $700 camera? And the lens was sold separately for another $200. So almost $900 for this little camera outfit, because the camera is sold without the lens. If you wanted to buy a lens, that was extra. And so allowing for the devaluation of the dollar, this would be what, $6,000 in today's money. And that little cell phone you have in your pocket can take much better pictures than this old 35mm could. And since this was November, people were getting ready to go on winter vacation, so snowmobiling was a big item at the time for people participating in that sport, going skiing and snowmobiling in the country. Remember, people had more time off to do such things than they do today. And there's more advertising for recreational campers and taking family vacations back then. And here's another thing about the Ford camper, where you can carry a camper on top for a Ford pickup truck. And you could team it up with a camper and use it to go on vacations at the time. well, people were more do-it-yourself oriented back then, so you could send away for this do-it-yourself grandfather clock kit for $150. But remember, $150 today is not the same as $150 back then. This would be like over $1,000, $1,500 in today's money. And even say the prices of the different movements for the different woods in the casing you can buy and how to send away for it. Do you have a grandfather clock in your home? How do you like using it? Let us know in the comments, especially if you built one. Was it fun to do? Here's another thing about engines. People were able to fix their cars back then. Today people probably have no idea how an engine even works. They open the hood and they see a maze of wires and don't know what to do. They have to call the dealer for help, because people can't fix cars themselves today like they could back then. And advertisement for Jeep when it was still part of American Motors Corporation, which is now merged into Fiat Chrysler or something or another. So the American Motor Company is gone from back then. People could send away for their questions about automobile questions. I'm not sure if Popular Science does this feature anymore, because cars are so hard to fix yourself, because the writer of the article would basically tell the reader how to fix the car themselves or what to do. And I believe of course they still sell oil filters for gasoline engines. If you have a gasoline engine, you need an oil filter. So the different part companies want you to buy their product. Here's an advertisement for an old obsolete 110 pocket camera. And it was like $70 back then, which would be a lot of money today. And here's an interesting advertisement from the Ford Motor Company. Notice the advertising was a lot longer in these days. People had more time to read the advertising than they do today. Articles and the text and advertising wouldn't be this long today. So 3 long paragraphs to get you to send away for this car buying book that they had for sale, and you send away and send the coupon, and the little booklet says what you need to know about buying a car, and there's obviously information for Ford Motor Company leasing at the time, so they wanted to make the money themselves instead of the dealer making money. If you lease the car from Ford Motor Company directly. Here's an advertisement about video closed circuit TV, and the little camera was like $400 back then, which would be about $4,000 today. And a little tape recorder for like $200, which would be like $2,000 today. And of course another cigarette commercial. Here's an advertisement for Dow Corning caulk material, and it tells how a reader used the caulk to insulate electrical wires in their car. They probably wouldn't do that today. They'd be worried about someone suing them for using the product incorrectly, but people were more do-it-yourself oriented back then, so they allowed such advertising. And of course another pocket camera, 110 camera with built-in flash. And here's another advertisement for repairing appliances at home. With the energy crisis, it was kind of like things happening now in 2023. People were spending more money on gasoline, so to save money they would want to fix their own appliances, and this school was obviously showing people how to take advantage of that by doing a correspondence class to show people how to fix small home appliances. And of course a motorcycle advertisement, the Arrow staple gun. The whole little kit was like $15 back then. A book about home improvement, do it yourself, and shows you how to do things to fix things around your house. People were more self-reliant back then. Don't forget, a lot of high schools had shop class in industrial education, so people had metal shop, auto shop, wood shop, so people were more handy around the house than they are today. And of course another Winchester rifle advertisement. Like I said before, people were more friendly for guns because before the criminal element made rifles and firearms a bad word today. But the Second Amendment still stands. And here's another cigarette commercial. Come to where the flavor is. Come to a Marlboro country. And here's the article about the metric conversion. And how Alabama was one of the first states to show kilometers and this miles per hour. It probably confused a lot of people. They see 55 and they probably try going 55 in a 35 zone, and the police were probably writing a lot of tickets back then. If people didn't know the difference, they busted for speeding in the 35 zone. And comparing a yardstick to a meter stick, and trying to explain people how to work with the decimals instead of the fractions from the English system, and how tools were becoming more available in metric than in English to make conversion easier. And here's an article about airbags becoming more common in automobiles, and it shows what happens when the airbag goes off. No, it's almost half an hour. I've got to speed this up. The flying airplane that was featured on the cover and showing how they built it. Popular Science doesn't really show these kind of articles anymore because people don't want to read the long text anymore. Today they just have a little short paper photograph of the plane and say this is new aircraft, and that's about it. The Popular Science today has been vastly downsized in the terms of writing and the quality of writing than it was back then. People had more time to read it back then too. And it talks about a mid-engine Fiat back then. The what's new was always a popular feature in Popular Science. Technology was still booming at the time. A remote gas meter was a popular thing just coming out back then. Obviously the utility companies wanted some way to make it easier for the meter reader to read more meters on their course during the day. And underwater diving suits, a magnetic lock, a monorail golf cart in Japan, transparent radio in England. Building ships and modular construction was a new thing back then. Little hearing aid glasses were, I guess, making the electronics was getting smaller back then. They could actually fit them in eyeglasses instead of carrying a little box around your neck for a hearing aid. So electronics were getting smaller in the 70s. And you could send away for clock, a battery operated clock movement for $10 back then, which would be about $100 in today's money. But you can go on a website today and get a clock movement for about $10. So replacement clock movement technology has actually gotten cheaper. And here's a little Konica 35 millimeter camera for $185, and a scientific calculator, which is $190. So that was $200 back in 1973. And a printing desktop adding machine was another $200. And a little 12-inch black and white TV. Did you ever have have to use a little 12-inch black and white TV? They used to be common. Now they're not even made anymore. Flat panels have replaced everything. And here's a interesting article: is a little LED clock. And how much do you think this little battery operated clock cost? They pretty much almost give them away in cereal boxes today. This little battery operated clock was $200 back then. That should be about $2,000 for devalued money. So a little LED clock was very high technology back then. And now you can get a little battery operated LED clock for a couple dollars. Snow tires, a little generator. This little generator is $400 back then, which would be about $4,000, and a good backup generator today is about a couple $1,000. So allowing for, you can get a little portable generator for a couple $100 today. So the price actually went down in portable generators by comparison. And here's a good article saying 1974 color TV, the viewing is better than ever. Well, back then we only had the NTSC technology, so the little grainy picture you get on an old color TV is all you had back then. And if you look at the restored TV programming from the time, you could usually see how when they sharpened the pictures today, you could see some mistakes in how things that wouldn't show up on the low resolution TVs back then. For example, you might see wood grain on jail cell bars, for example, and they were made out of wood and painted silver to look like metal. But in the old TV technology, it would look like iron because you wouldn't see the wood grain on the painted wood grain back then. And it gives you more technology, how the color technology worked with the electron gun and how they make the color image on the TV. And it shows the prices. Look at some of the prices here: $600, $400, $700, $600, $500, $630. Now you can get a flat panel TV for a couple $100. So prices of TVs have certainly come down and become better technology by comparison. Here's an article about a comet that was coming at the time. It doesn't say when the comet would come back, Comet Kohoutek, and tells you when it would be seen. So maybe it was newly discovered and they didn't know when it would come back. If you know when Comet Kohoutek will come back, let us know in the comments. Will it be coming back in our lifetime, or it might be millions of years before it comes back. And it shows what it would look like for those readers who couldn't get out to see it. And of course, the coming of Halley's Comet was foretold in 1986 when they knew it was coming back. And here's an interesting article about computer-generated imagery, CGI. Early CGI was experimental at that time, and it shows how the computer and the computer technology would make the images appear on the TV tube and it'd be recorded on camera. So it's like early video editing technology. And you can see some examples, screenshots of the time of how primitive the imagery was at the time. And since it's all experimental, it doesn't really say anything as how much it cost, but you can only imagine how much computer technology of that type would cost back then. Another article about snowmobiling and skiing. They're talking about using styrofoam, and you can see the rebar and styrofoam forms awaiting the pouring of concrete in there to make the insulated concrete walls at the time, and you see the windows. And now they have houses that'll be a big three-dimensional printer making a house today. So their builders are always looking for new technology. And here's a early TV table, how you can make your own TV snacking table, so you can make a do-it-yourself table to eat while you're watching TV back then. And a lot of people were living in the suburbs back then, so lawn care and contraptions to make your gardening work easier, and chopping up mulch or yard maintenance was a big thing back then. And you see a person using a chipper to cut down bush branches to make a little mulch pile here you could use around the garden and for yard work around the home. And here's an article about how you make your own digital clock. Remember, as we saw in What's New, a little LED clock was $200, so an article of how to make your own would certainly be timely. If someone didn't want to spend $200 at the time, you could build your own. And it gives you the look at the bill of materials, parts list to what you needed to make your own clock, and it even say it has memory and how to make it, and it has a schematic here, wiring diagram to if you actually wanted to undertake this. And how much does a clock radio today cost? You could probably get one for $20. So technology and prices for digital clocks has certainly come down in price by comparison as technology improved over the last 50-something years. Here's an article about 8-track player machines for use in the home. They talk about how automobiles had 8-track players in the automobiles, but now people wanted to play the 8 tracks they had in their automobiles in their home, so companies were making 8-track players in the home, which is now obsolete technology, but who knows? Audio cassettes and records are becoming popular again, so maybe 8-track players, 8 tracks and 8-track players will become popular too, like cassettes and records and other mechanical media, instead of going with more modern digital media. And here's some examples of companies making metric measuring tape rolls and measuring tapes to capitalize on the metric popularity at the time. They figured people would buy the metric and sell more product that way. And it talks about how you can use metric in your shop and how much easier it is. You don't have to add the fractions, and you could add millimeters and centimeters instead of doing the crazy math of adding up fractions in the old way. And it has metric data for specifications, basically conversion lists for those who are still wanting to use the English imperial system instead of the metric. And it gives a review of a belt sander and how to sharpen planer blades. And here's an article about troubleshooting your own electronic ignition system. Remember, electronic ignition is a lot better than the mechanical points. So when you're setting the timing on your engine, the electronic ignition was a lot easier and foolproof than having to set the points by hand. And you have the old system, so you could actually do this at home by yourself. Now can you set your timing on your engine yourself at home? If you've set your timing on a new modern car, 2000 something, let us know in the comments how easy it is by comparison if you had an engine setting timing in engines in the 1970s by comparison. And it talks about how the ignition modules and all that hook up. And it talks about how the magnet sets the fires off the engine for the electronic ignition. And here's another correspondence class offering Book of the Month Club kind of thing, where you send away for different types of books: automobile, home repair, reference books, craft and hobby. So you can build up your library. Remember, they didn't have the internet or YouTube back then. If you wanted to know how to do something, you had to read it in a book or know how to do it yourself. They didn't have the ready reference, the power of the internet like we have today, where you want to look something up, you had to have your own library at home. And Popular Science would have home diagrams. You could, if you liked the look of the drawing and the floor plan, you could actually send away for blueprints if you want to actually have it built. Remember, people had more time and basically money. If you wanted to build a little vacation home, you could build it, and you have time off from work to go in to your vacation home back then. How many people have vacation homes now? Unless, of course, you're very well to do nowadays. And here's an advertisement for Rockwell using plywood material. If you're selling plywood, you want to sell the tools and how to work with the material. So to the do-it-yourselfers at the time, remember, people were more knowing how to use power tools back then. And here's another interesting article, advertisement from an oil company, Sunoco, basically saying how friendly Sunoco is and how they're on your side during the oil crisis at the time, and how friendly they would be if you go in for service. Remember, people were angry at oil companies for the high prices, so if they wanted to have a happy face when you drive into a Sunoco gasoline station at the time. They didn't want more goodwill, feel-good advertising at the time. Here's a do-it-yourself article about building your own table. And here's another advertisement about a camper. Remember, people had more time off vacation time off to travel the country with their family back then. And here's an column about taking care of your car and how you could heat up your engine and battery with heat lamps. And actually, here's a useful tip of you keeping a pair of rubber gloves in your glove box, so if you have to change a tire, you can wear the gloves and not get your hands dirty, which would actually be a useful tip even today. If you're on your way to work, you don't want to show up with dirty, filthy hands, unless you want to prove to your boss that you really did have a flat tire and your dirty hands would prove it. Here's an advertisement from Aaron's Snowblowers. You can see how you see the person up here toiling and struggling, shoveling the old-fashioned way, and the person using the snowblower is almost finished by comparison. Certainly a good visual impact, so showing the ad of how good snowblowers are to make shoveling snow easier. And here's a wordless workshop by Rory Dottie. You send in your ideas, and if your idea is accepted, he would make a drawing of your idea, and you'd get paid $25. Remember, $25 back then is like $250 today. So winning that contest for $25 in 1973 would be a big accomplishment. And here's another. Popular Science would have plans to build things yourself, and you could send away for the project plans to do it. People were more do-it-yourself oriented back then. People would have tools and stuff around the home to do such things. Here's an article, do-it-yourself plumbing. You could, for running water lines and such like that. People don't really do that anymore. If a water pipe leaks or something, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and call the plumber. Here's another correspondence article about some people who, if you didn't go to high school or something, you're probably stuck in a low-paying job. If you took a correspondence class, you would make better money. So they encourage you to send away this coupon. Let us know in the comments if you did a correspondence school after not completing high school, and did it really work, or were you able to get more money by doing such a thing? And the back page advertising of these magazines was always good for the advertisements they would have. There's an article about sending away for guitar lessons, watch repairing, you can learn meat cutting at home, real estate. You can make Social Security plates where you'd buy a machine and stamp Social Security cards and aluminum plates back then. And you could Foley bell saw, they're still around, so I believe they actually still make this planer gang saw machine where you could actually cut lumber at home. They still make this machine, so Foley bell saw is still around. And here's another at-home training correspondence school where you could do electronics, mechanical engineering, air conditioning. People still use air conditioning today. Small appliance repair, and of course they just get you to send away for their catalogs, and they give you a list of choices of what you want to sign up for. As you see, those home correspondence classes were pretty common back then. And here's another correspondence class of how to, I guess, be more romantic, and in this case it's lessons on phonograph record, and it'll teach you how to be more romantic and win over the opposite sex or whatever, get your love life going. And of course, since people are more do-it-yourself oriented, they'll probably be more inventive. So there are a lot of these companies sell your invention, and it will tell you how to market your invention and make money. Just don't have a big corporation bully you out of your patent with their law department. Everyone says you want to patent something, but if you can't enforce your patent is pretty much worthless. And there's a FM stereo headphones at the time. The little winch, I guess if you're doing, a lot of people are doing 4x4s, and if you get your car stuck, you could pull yourself out. The article continues about the airbags, and another correspondence school offering automotive servicing, air conditioning, and I guess how you They'll send you this tools and equipment to get started in air conditioning. Remember, back then, air conditioning had the regular Freon, which has the lower compression than the R410 air conditioning today. So air conditioning was a lot easier back then because the parts didn't have the higher compression ratings and pressures like they have today. So with the lower pressures, the equipment lasted longer. And article about how to be a locksmith. You get a key cutting machine by completing the class. Fireplace inserts, since people were concerned about energy, people were burning wood at home, so this little heatilator thing would improve your efficiency when you're burning firewood in your home. And another camper conversion article. And another ignition thing. I guess the benefits are it gives a longer and more higher power spark in the ignition than the standard ignition systems at the time. I guess they compare to the original equipment manufacturer specifications as a small, weak little spark, but their ignition coil gives a bigger, more powerful spark for more power. And the article continues from the new airplane. Another advertisement about being a locksmith, and you can see they cheaped out. You had to cut the ad out of the paper, fold it up, and send away instead of having a business reply card inserted in the magazine. They made the reply card part of the magazine advertisement. It'd be your own burglar alarm installation. And here's a Edmund Scientific advertisement from the time when Edmund Scientific was selling more crazy stuff like this before they split off from the optical company division. So they had more crazy products on hand, the telescopes, the magnet fishing, optical, and the science toys. They even had the cover car like you'd see in the old comic book advertisements back then. And of course it gives you the order form to send away, and weather balloons and all the crazy stuff back then. And you could learn leather crafting at home. You could make leather items. And Constantine Woodworking, I believe they might still be around. Let me know in the comments, but you send away and they'd send you 20 wood samples. And this is only $1 back then. You get 20 wood samples for $1. But remember, the devaluation of the money would be like $10 today. You got a little air compressor for your car. If you get a flat tire, but if the tire is blown out, a little air pump ain't gonna do much good. Unless you have a slow leak and you have to pump the tire up every now and then. And here's another popular advertisement at the time. Miracle Jumbo TV antenna. It plugs into your house wire, your house outlet, and it's supposed to turn your whole house wiring into a part of the TV antenna. It uses no current, plugs into any outlet, no special tools or material needed, no more rabbit ears or ugly outside antennas. Utilizes all the wiring in your home, every room a reception area. Only $1.99. But you still see those TV antenna companies selling for about $20. You see on TV, they still sell TV antennas, but they're HD TV antennas now. And you could buy a whole house for, I guess you buy a condo for $10,000. You could learn to play guitar, do bodybuilding, another clock clock advertisements, another mail order. You could buy pipes and tobacco at the time. And American Machine and Tool Company was in business at the time. You could buy a belt sander for $20, but if you want to buy the motor, that'd be another $20. So they were selling the tools, but the motor was extra. You had to either have your own motor or buy a motor for another $20. Oh. Heathkit was a popular do-it-yourself. You send away for the catalog and they'd sell you a kit of how to make your own projects at home for electronics. Another, you could buy a lathe for $200, but it'd be about, what, $2,000, so a good metal cutting lathe would be a couple $1,000s. Radio Shack stereo system. Looks like quadraphonic 4-channel. Quadraphonic was a big thing at the time. And here's an early microwave oven commercial from International. It doesn't tell you how much the microwave oven costs, but it just invites readers to send away for more information. So microwave ovens were a new thing back then. You could do molding with a power drill. I don't know if a power drill would spin fast enough to do routing on wood, but if you wanted to give it a try, it'd be $5 or $7. Concrete molding, another fireplace furnace. You could send away for the popular science project catalog, AC generators. You could learn about the Rustitarians, or whatever they are. Are you a Rustitarian? What's this unpublished facts of life all about? Let us know in the comments. Yeah, the electronics buying guide. You could earn $20 plowing with a little bulldozer. Here's an old advertisement for Kelsey Printing. You could buy a little printing press and print stuff at home, and so they say start your own little print shop at home, which is does anyone have need for printing, old-fashioned print press like that? Let us know in the comments what you used it for, if you actually paid someone to do real printing instead of laser printing at home. Right, here's another AMT lathe for $30, $40, and you do a speed changer for $15, and you buy the motor for $20. And it gives you a long description about what the product is and how their product is basically the same. Instead of paying top dollar for a different name, and how it's made the same way. And how you can make mechanical clock kits at home, and Olston Electronics catalog at the time. And you could get a sports car kit to buy a body and put it on an old car frame, for example. A lot of people were doing that to Volkswagen Bugs and Beetles at the time. You'd buy an old Volkswagen and make it look into a fancy sports car. And regular classified advertising, Christmas gifts, auto supplies. Almost out of time here. Keep this under an hour. Laser, manufacturing, Consumers Union. Don't forget, a lot of merchants were selling shoddy equipment, so you want to know what you're buying. They're being ripped off. Like Consumer Reports is a popular thing where they watchdog for consumer action. More classified advertising. Bumping up against time here. We'll keep this short. You can learn how to make fishing nets at home. Magic tricks were popular at the time. Coins and currency had a big following. Stamp collecting was popular. There's even cassettes you could send away for audio cassettes. Back then you only had, what, reel-to-reel tapes, audio cassettes, or LP records. Now we have digital media like MP3 players. We could fit hundreds of hours on a little thumb drive by comparison. Which, by the way, you're hearing in the background is public domain music. Inventors were sent away for inventors. They'd be more than happy to take your money to file a patent if you didn't know how to do the paperwork yourself. Everyone should know how to complete government paperwork. Another correspondence class, school where you send away for information, a camper, and that's it. Another Camel advertising. Thanks for coming. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. That's all for now. Come again for another Robot VARNAC video. Goodbye for now.